Hello everyone. I want to give you a background here for the Advanced Mobile Apps class, and that is that this is assignment number 5. I want to go over some of the details of this, and that is we're going to be creating a news reader app, and there's some neat things going on here. Just a brief overview about it, and then I'll show you how it's going to work. One, we're going to read an RSS feed, and all RSS stands for is Rich Site Summary. So we're going to read an RSS feed, and we're going to write that data to an XML file. Then we're going to read and parse that XML file into Java objects. So there's quite a bit going on here. It looks fairly simple, but there is actually quite a bit going on here. So just let me now, before I demonstrate some of this code, let me show how this app is going to work. So user, you could have a splash screen if you want to, and I want to clarify when I say splash screen, I mean the main screens. So you don't have to have an intermediate screen before this indicating that this is your newsreader app. Although, if you want to do that, what I would suggest with the transition splash screen, as I'll refer to it from now on, it's a cool thing. It's kind of a gimmicky thing, but you could use it to or put it to good use. But when you do that, again, take in consideration your first time user and your repeat user, because you don't want to have the repeat user waiting too long before the transition to the next activity. And by the same token, the first time user, you want to make sure that they understand what that splash screen transition activity is actually there for, and any text that may be on that screen. As you see here in this newsreader, there's a series of articles, and we're going to talk more about how those articles get here. But notice they have a date on there, the day, the time, the actual date in a particular format, and a title of the article. And we're going to click on one of these right here. And you notice when the user clicks on there, it is indicating a bit more to the article, and if we find that interesting, we can click the read more link there. And what this will do is, provided you have an internet connection, what it will do is actually go to the site, the URL where that article is featured. So again, there's some interesting aspects going on here, and we'll go back to this. And by the way, just as an FYI, CNN just saw this here. Interesting. I'm not a big fan of CNN, but there was just an interesting article here that just happened to pop up, and that was I'm glad they put this as opinion here. I think that's important that they do that. Projectile fired by North Korea toward Japan Wednesday morning was likely a ballistic missile. That's interesting. This just happened here, April 4th, 2017. It'll be interesting to find out how this pans out. Anyway, as we continue on, that's again, this is going to be the first screen. Unless you want to add a splash screen to that, that's fine. What we'll be covering here, and I think that you'll find interesting as well too, is the concepts of threads, what threads are, files, and particularly XML files, adapters, why we use adapters, and intents. Intents, I-N-T-E-N-T-S. Each news item here has a publication date and title. And then clicking on an item in the item's activity will actually display that item activity. So when you click this one of these, what will happen, it actually goes to that, and then you could read more by clicking on the link. So each item then will have a title, a publication date, a description, and a link to the article. So again, when you click on further here, you have your item, you have your, the item title here, the publication date, which is right here, the description, and then a link here to the read more button that will be the default browser that's used on your device. Now, as I mentioned, RSS stands for Rich Site Summary. You could use it for various things. Blog entries, any updated works that you're doing to show possibly followers of your works, news headlines like we're showing here, and other things as well too. And it just uses the neat thing about it is it uses standardized XML file format. So the various parts can be used for in the RSS feed for, again, title, publication date, description, link, etc. Now, a thread. What is a thread? Well, a thread is really a single flow of execution. Now, by default, Android uses single threads, which are called, by the way, UI threads. UI stands for User Interface Thread. It's a user interface thread. That's the single thread used by default. And the thread displays a user interface. But it also listens for events that may occur when the user interacts with the user interface. For instance, a swipe, a click, those types of events. Tapping with your finger. But one thing you have to understand is never perform processing on the user interface thread that takes more than a second. For instance, like downloading data. You wouldn't want to do that because you don't want the user to wait for the download. So instead what you want to do is create a second thread for the processing. Now similarly, when you're doing what we call I/O operations, input-output operations, for instance, reading and writing two files, reading from and writing two files, you would want to perform that in a separate thread because it's processor intensive. So the I/O operations many times are slower, or I should say I/O operations are many times slower than CPU operations. So any type of input-output is going to be a lot slower than any type of central processing unit operations. So you can have the UI able to listen to events while the I/O operations, again I/O stands for input-output operations, are performed in a second thread. And this is how we get what's known as multi-threading or multitasking. Multi-threading permits application tasks to overlap, and that's how we get the term multitasking. Now, you can have asynchronous tasks run in a separate thread, meaning in the background, and it doesn't need to be synchronized with any other threads. For that, though, you have to use the async task class that manages the thread, and we'll show this in some code here shortly. The async class, ASYNC-TASK, async task class manages threads. Generally, it's related to an activity class, and usually the code is what's known as a nested inner class of an activity class. Now, again, I will show this in some code. Now, sometimes you need to start a separate thread to execute a timed task. For example, if you want to check for periodic updates, like in this newsreader. So you could have it check every so often, every so many seconds, minute, whatever time that you want that app to check for new articles. Now, to read from the internet, you must include an internet permission in the manifest file. Now, let me show you this. Here I'm going to the app. I'm going to the manifest file, which I actually have open here. It's right here. I'll go to it in a second, but just to show you where it is, app, manifest, and Android manifest.xml. And when you click on that, let me get rid of this. When you click on that and make it larger, make sure that your code resembles this. And again, I'm in the Android manifest.xml file, so you can see right here. Okay? The first thing, not the first thing, but you can look at all this code, make sure it matches yours. You're going to create this newsreader, so you're going to open up your app and create a newsreader app. And for that, all you'd have to do is just go to New, Project, and then you would just type in here News Reader, right? And then you would see here it would say Newsreader 2 because I already have a newsreader. And then you would just go through the steps here, which I'm not going to do. But for the initial newsreader, you would just call this Newsreader the application name. Okay, as you can see here, right? Just like this. Now, one thing that you want to have, because we're going to be actually connecting to the internet, is you must make sure that in your manifest file you allow permission for the user to connect to the internet, and you're going to be using this constant here called android.permission. The constant is internet, allowing the user to access the internet. And so you would just put line 7 inside of your manifest file. Here's also some other options here within the application and application elements. Take a look at that. Might be a little bit easier to see that. So you're going to have the label is going to be newsreader. You're going to have a Mitmap IC launcher. We've done that many times before to have in our application. You see this little launcher icon. We're going to use that. And by the way, the launcher icon works in both of these activities. Okay, and again, here's some more further information if you need the assistance there. Let me separate the elements so that you can see them. Here's where you get the launcher. And again, this would be under the activity and activity elements here. Actually, there's 2 of them, so let me separate those. So there's that, and this is indication for the launcher icon. All right, gang, so that's that. That's the Android manifest.xml file. It should look similar to that. And so we're going to talk about some other constants as well too. We're going to talk about SAX. What SAX is, S-A-X, simple API for XML. That's all that stands for, SAX, simple API for XML. And what that is used for is to parse XML into a series of Java objects. And then also, we're going to talk about the various classes we're going to be using here. One of them is the RSS Feed Handler class. The RSS Feed Handler class is right here. And we're going to go into the code in good detail. I have comments here. And really what this does is it handles events that occur when the XML file is parsed. So, gang, I just wanted to give you this background here. And I'll go into the Java classes. You'll see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 classes. Here is our res folder. And for that, we're going to have, inside of that, we're also going to have layouts, and we're going to have 3 different activities. We're going to have an activity underscore item, an activity underscore items, I-T-E-M-S, and a list view underscore item.xml. So for these 2, for item activity and items activity, you're going to have associated layouts. So you create your class here, and the layouts would be associated with that. But for this layout, all you would need is the list view underscore item.xml file. So these 2, activity item and activity items, these 2 would come with the classes above when you create these classes, item activity and items activity. The list view underscore item, that you'll have to create on your own. Just right click and create this layout. Okay, that's that. As far as the values, There's got a strings.xml file here, which I'll open up. And here's our strings.xml. Let me show you that. Make it a little bit larger. Here, I'm just indicating that we're going to get the CNN latest news. That's going to be the item title, item pub date. I'm sorry, this is items. Got to make sure I don't confuse you here. The items title is the list, the listing. It's actually a list view that we're using, similar to an array, but it's going to be contain Java objects rather than primitive types or strings. It's actually going to parse the XML file into different objects. Anyway, this is the item's title, the item pub date, item pub date, item title, item description, item link. Notice this item's title is for that listing. So you see that CNN.com, and right here you're seeing CNN. The app name is Newsreader, and CNN latest news, and also the pub date, the publication date we're having here. Item title, item description, item link. But this is for all of the items, and the rest of these below are for the individual elements of the RSS feed. Okay, let me just move this off to the side here for a second. Now, when I click on this again, we'll just do this. You see that we have the title, the date, the description, and a link over here. All right, gang, I'm going to stop here right now, and then we're going to go into the details of the code here shortly. See you in a bit.